The markets are closed, but business stories are just heating up. I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us on Newsfeed Business. Europe has entered a new era of harsh geostrategic competition and will have to work together to avoid a global race to the bottom. That call coming from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Tuesday at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. She added that the use of sanctions, export controls, and tariffs was likely to increase, so for Europe to sustain its growth in the next quarter of a century, it must shift gears. We now take you to Davos, where von der Leyen told the forum the European Union is ready to negotiate with the United States.
Our first priority will be to engage early, discuss common interests, and be ready to negotiate. We will be pragmatic, but we will always stand by our principles. We have entered a new era of harsh geostrategic competition. The world's major economies are vying for access to raw materials, new technologies, and global trade routes. From AI to clean tech, from quantum to space, from the Arctic to the South China Sea, the race is on. As this competition intensifies, we will likely continue to see frequent use of economic tools, such as sanctions, export controls, and tariffs, that are intended to safeguard economic and national security. But it is important that we balance the imperative to safeguard our security against our opportunity to innovate and enhance our prosperity. In this spirit, we will need to work together to avoid a global race to the bottom, because it is in no one's interest to break the bonds of the global economy. Rather, we need to modernize the rules to sustain our ability to produce mutual gain for our citizens. To sustain our growth in the next quarter of the century, Europe must shift gears. And this is why I asked Mario Draghi to deliver a report on European competitiveness. And on that basis, next week, the European Commission is presenting our roadmap, the competitiveness compass, which will drive our work for the next 5 years.
Von der Leyen added that the European Union must pursue a more balanced relationship with China and find solutions of mutual interest.
It is time to pursue a more balanced relationship with China in a spirit of fairness and reciprocity. This new engagement with countries across the world is not only an economic necessity, but it's a message to the world. It is Europe's response to rising global competition. We want more cooperation with all who are open for it.
Now, when asked about Ukraine, she said Ukraine alone should decide on its own territory and that the EU will support Ukraine as long as necessary.
We have supported Ukraine by now by almost 130 billion euros, but we will continue to support Ukraine without any question. Whatever happens next, for us it's important that Ukraine stays an independent country and that it is Ukraine that decides on its own territory. And therefore, Klaus, the sentence is still valid. We stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes.
Meanwhile, Chancellor Olaf Scholz voiced cautious optimism for the potential for German-U.S. relations under President Donald Trump. Speaking on the first full day of Trump's new term in office, Scholz, citing good first talks with his administration, stressed that cooperation was key for peace and prosperity. He said cooperation between Europe and the United States was key for peace and security worldwide, as well as economic progress. However, the German Chancellor added that Europe must become more self-reliant. That's as Germany's ambassador to Washington has warned internally of turbulent relations under Trump, while German companies have sounded the alarm over threatened tariffs under the new U.S. administration.
Welt, die sich im Spiegel sozialer Medien permanent am Rand.
The United States is our closest ally outside of Europe. And I will do everything in my power to ensure that it remains that way because that is in our mutual interest. President Trump and his administration will keep the world on its toes in the coming years, in energy and climate policy, in trade policy, in foreign and security policy, and in many other areas. President Trump announced all of this again yesterday. We can and we will deal with all of this. Without unnecessary excitement and outrage, but also without false ingratiation or mouthing off. President Trump says America first and he means it. We Europeans must be strong from within. We must stick together among ourselves and with partners worldwide. We must become more competitive and more resilient. Isolation costs prosperity. We will defend free trade as the basis of our prosperity together with other partners. Europe is committed to free, fair global trade and we are not alone in this.
Panama's president has rejected a plan by Donald Trump to take back the Panama Canal, telling his U.S. counterpart that the key trade route is and will remain in the country's hands. In his inaugural speech, President Trump claimed that Panama had broken a promise to remain neutral, alleging that China is operating the Panama Canal. President Jose Raul Mulino said he rejected Trump's words in its entirety, adding, "There is no presence of any nation in the world that interferes with our administration." Following Trump's address, Mulino said in a social media post on X that the canal was not a concession from any nation, but was the result of generational struggles that culminated in 1999. The Panama Canal is one of the U.S.'s most important trade routes, with about 40% of all countries' container ships passing through the waterway between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. President Donald Trump said Monday that he expects to put 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico starting February 1st, while declining to flesh out his plans for taxing Chinese imports. Trump made the announcement in response to reporters' questions while signing executive actions in the Oval Office. On his first day back at the White House, Trump pledged in his inaugural address that tariffs would be coming and said foreign countries would be paying the trade penalties, even though those taxes are currently paid by domestic importers and often passed along to consumers. Trump later on Monday said tariffs would make the U.S. rich. A top official with the Canadian government said it would be prepared for almost all possibilities regarding the status of trade with the United States. Chinese Vice Premier Ding Xuexiang said China will expand its imports hours after U.S. President Trump unexpectedly held off tariffs on China on his first day back at the White House. Ding's comments came shortly after Trump avoided committing to a plan for Chinese tariffs following his inauguration Monday. Instead, he focused on levies on Canada and Mexico, signaling plans to impose previously threatened tariffs by as much as 25% February
1st.
In terms of foreign trade, we do not pursue a trade surplus. We are willing to import more competitive and high-quality products and services from abroad to promote balanced trade development. China's overall tariff level has dropped to 7.3%, which is relatively low globally. We provide all least developed countries that have diplomatic relations with China with zero tariff treatment on 100% of their tax products. There is no way out with protectionism, and there are no winners in a trade war. Economic globalization is not a zero-sum game where you lose and I win, but a process of mutual benefit and shared progress.
Bloomberg reports Trump suggested he would have meetings and calls with Chinese President Xi Jinping, saying he'd been invited to China without elaborating. The U.S. leader signed an order for his administration to address unfair trade practices globally and investigate China's compliance with a deal struck during his first term. U.S. President Trump announces a $500 billion private sector investment in AI infrastructure. The project, dubbed Stargate, will be funded by OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle. It effectively rolls back the executive order of former U.S. President Joe Biden on AI that was intended to reduce the risks the technology poses to consumers, workers, and national security.
Together, these world-leading technology giants are announcing the formation of Stargate. So put that name down in your books, because I think you're going to hear a lot about it in the future. A new American company that will invest $500 billion at least in AI infrastructure in the United States and very, very quickly, moving very rapidly, creating over 100,000 American jobs almost immediately.
The CEOs of SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle were all present at the White House for the launch of Stargate.
Massive for a while. AI holds incredible promise for all of us, for every American. We've actually been working with OpenAI for a while and with Massive for a while. The data centers are actually under construction. The first of them are under construction in Texas. Each building's 500,000 square feet. There are 10 buildings currently being built, but that will expand to 20 and other locations beyond the Abilene location, which is our first location.
I think this will be the most important project of this era. And as Masa said, for AGI to get built here, to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, to create a new industry centered here. We wouldn't be able to do this without you, Mr. President, and I'm thrilled that we get to. I think it'll be an exciting project. I think we'll be able to do all of the wonderful things that these guys talked about.
Meanwhile, Alphabet President and Chief Investment Officer Ruth Porat tells Bloomberg the U.S. is not guaranteed to maintain a lead over China in the race to develop artificial intelligence. She says the U.S. may be a year ahead in models, the West ahead in chips, but China is on par or ahead on what's called diffusion of basic capabilities. Bitcoin approached the previous session's record high on Tuesday as the top U.S. markets regulator unveiled a plan to overhaul rules for the sector. The world's largest cryptocurrency hit a record high of $109,071 on Monday when Trump, who has pledged to be a crypto president, was sworn in, but sank when crypto was not included in a flurry on day one. Flurry of news on day one. Bitcoin prices rose 3.8%, while Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency, gained 1.4% as the market shook off some of that disappointment. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's new leadership said on Tuesday it had created a task force to develop a regulatory framework for digital assets, the first major move by Trump's new administration to overhaul crypto policy. Some analysts warned, however, volatility until Trump's administration starts to announce concrete policies long hoped for by the cryptocurrency. The World Health Organization regrets Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from the organization. The WHO hopes Trump reconsiders his move. The agency adds it is open to engage in a constructive dialogue to maintain the partnership for the benefit of millions of people. It points out its partnership with the U.S. has saved countless lives and protected Americans from health threats. On the lighter side, Louis Vuitton's men's creative director Pharrell Williams drew his audience to a rear courtyard of the Louvre Museum after dark for a fall-winter cat show on Tuesday, kicking off Paris Fashion Week with a lineup of jazzed-up streetwear. Models strode around the set to marching music, parading chunky wool suits, short bomber jackets, leather Bermuda, and coats in pastels, autumn tones, and psychedelic renditions of the brand's signature logo patterns. There were colorful speedy bags, lobster claw charms, pearl embellishments, thick jewelry, and utility pockets in suede leather. For this collection, Williams teamed up with his longtime collaborator Nigo, creative director of another LVMH-owned label, Kenzo. Pharrell and Nigo have been active in street culture for decades, founding the label Bilyonaryo Boys Club in 2003 and playing a role in streetwear's rise to prominence, blending music and fashion. That's as globally high-end labels are grappling with a rare slowdown in appetite for fashion and accessories, with the key Chinese market a particular source of concern, while hopes are pinned on the U.S. market for growth this year. Business and economy news from around the country in a moment. Newsfeed Business will be back. Stay with us on BNC. Welcome back to Newsfeed Business. The relationship of the Philippines and the United States will continue to be strong under the second term of President Donald Trump. Philippine Ambassador to the U.S. Jose Manuel Babe Romualdez tells the Bilyonaryo News Channel's Business 360 that this is due to the bipartisan support that the country enjoys in the U.S. Congress. The statement came after Trump reiterated the American First policy.
We also have to remember that it was during the time of President Trump, when then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who said that they had an ironclad commitment to the Mutual Defense Treaty. So as far as our defense arrangements are with the United States, it will remain as it is.
The Tourism Department wants to liberalize visa policies to attract more foreign visitors, particularly from India. That report from our Hannah T.
Tourism Secretary Cristina Garcia Frasco says there's a need to liberalize visa policies to make the Philippines more globally competitive. She noted that only 300,000 Chinese tourists from an expected count of 2 million arrived last year due to stricter rules on China's e-visa system, prompting the Tourism Department to target the Indian market instead. Discussions are underway to implement an e-visa system for Indian tourists, with joint working group meetings already in progress to prepare for the expected influx.
With the challenges that we are facing pertaining to the Chinese market, we are now looking at India. Napaka-popular ng Pilipinas sa mga Indians, especially in terms of wedding tourism. Kasali na po dyan yung ating diving and other tourism products.
On the issue of Chinese tourist decline and concerns over alleged spying activities in the country, Frasco stressed that these incidences remain national security issues which are beyond the purview of the DOT. She reiterated that tourism transcends many things, including cultural and political differences, which is why it's a very powerful force for unity. She said that the DOT remains committed to recovering the Chinese market while focusing on expanding into India. Nearly 80,000 Indian tourists visited the Philippines last year, reflecting a 12% increase from 2023. The DOT is now working to streamline the visa process and establish direct flights between India and key Philippine destinations. Hannah T, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
An e-wallet app promises to bring blockchain security to digital payments for tamper-proof transactions. Let's get details from our correspondent Sujin Kim, who joins us on the line. Sujin, is this an e-wallet app endorsed by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas?
Yes, Raine, Bitaka is regulated by the Bangko Sentral, ensuring that it complies with regulatory standards for safety and security. For context, this morning, the newest e-wallet in the market was launched, ensuring tamper-proof and fraud-free transactions. It is the first blockchain-powered e-wallet in the country, offering robust protection against fraud and data breaches. Through its decentralized blockchain system, each transaction cannot be intercepted, providing a stronger defense against hacking and manipulation. The decentralized data storage further enhances security by making it more difficult for cyber attacks to target user information. With its launch, Bitaka anticipates reaching 500,000 users in the first year, with projections to grow to 5 to 8 million users within the next 5 years. One of the key advantages of Bitaka is its efforts to reduce remittance costs from the current 6% to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal of 3%, offering significant relief to overseas Filipino workers and entrepreneurs. Beyond security, Bitaka allows users to pay, send, and receive money at lower charges, thanks to the reduced operational costs enabled by blockchain technology. And those are latest updates from here in Bonifacio Global City. Back to you, Raine.
Thank you so much for that report, Sujin Kim. Now, Philippine shares bouncing back to positive territory despite the uncertainty in Chinese markets over President Donald Trump's tariff threats. The PSE index was up 0.1%, closing at 63.48, finishing as the 8th best performer in Asia. But among all sectoral indices, only services ended in the green, with mining and oil sliding the most at 0.5%. Decliners also outpaced advancers 103 to 73. Total value turnover stood at 4.7 billion pesos. Today's most active stocks, meanwhile, ended mixed. The BPI had the biggest gain, rising almost 2%. Universal Robina, meanwhile, declined the most, falling more than 2%. Also on Wednesday, the peso so far slightly strengthens to 58.54, despite the tariff uncertainty. And that's a wrap for today's Newsfeed Business. Thank you so much for making us your daily source of financial insights. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top. Follow the Money is next at 4:30.